It's the JJYP podcast. Broadcasting from a tiny little town in a tiny little state in the Midwest, from a tiny little planet traveling 67,000 miles an hour through space, you're listening to the Just Josh and You podcast. And as those of you know that have been listening this season, we've been a little preoccupied with paranormal stuff and death and religion and things like that. And it just so happens that we have a very interesting guest today. Barb, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh.
Thanks for stopping in, saying hi.
Thank you for having me.
Will you explain to the audience what you do for a living?
I am a funeral pre-need director, and I'm also an assistant funeral director. I work for Newcomer Funeral Service Group Incorporated.
How long have you been doing that?
I am in my 25th year.
What made you want to get into that?
Actually, what happened, my best friend was working at Johnson Funeral Home 25 years ago, and she was leaving to move to Georgia. And she said, I think you'd be really good at this because you love people. You're a people person. So I applied for the job, and I got the job as administrative assistant, and I've built from there.
What was it like starting out?
Interesting.
Was it a surprise? Did you see it in a different light before you went in?
I did, and I never really thought about death.
Really?
Before I started, I had never really had anybody die that I knew that was close to me. I mean, I had my grandmother die when I was 11, but other than that, not really nobody.
Did it interest you at all?
Yes, it did. I mean, I wanted to see and everything, go look in the prep room, when people were brought in, but then it's not my favorite part of it. It depends on the situation.
Okay, so it still kind of gets to you a little bit.
Oh, it does.
It's not something you can just completely get used to?
No, especially when it's someone I know.
Right.
And I do, know
and
a lot
being
of
in
people
a small
community.
town,
Mm-hmm.
you're most likely
to know
more often than not, you know a lot of the customers that are coming in, right?
Yep, and a lot of them are our repeat families, and so it's hard to look at them that way. I do hair and makeup sometimes for some of the ladies that were getting ready, and always done a good job, I think. Keeps the families happy.
What were some of the things that surprised you when you got into the industry?
How long certain things take to happen as far as autopsies and getting people back, into our care for their families, paperwork, death certificates, all insurance claims. I mean, there's so much that goes in with it.
Right.
So much. And so much of that you have to get done for the families in a very timely manner. They need it now.
Yeah, because the average funeral turnaround time is pretty quick. I've noticed.
Lately, it has been. A lot of people have really been wanting to get it done and over with, like right away.
How long can you store a body?
Well, if they're embalmed, probably quite a while. I mean, we've had one that we had well over a month one time.
Wow.
Because he was going to be shipped to another country. And we had him for a long time.
So does the embalming process prevent the body from degenerating?
Yeah, decomposition. I mean, it just preserves them a whole lot longer, and it definitely helps with decomposition, and you want to do that. But there's cases you cannot do that. It can't even happen.
And you don't have to legally, right?
No, you can be placed. You can do an immediate burial. You don't have to be embalmed. For a public viewing, you have to have the person embalmed. If you're going to open the casket,
no matter what,
and have families there viewing or people coming in to the funeral home, they need to be embalmed.
And why is that?
It helps a lot. Odor.
Ah.
Decomposition again. We try to keep a person refrigerated for as long as possible if that situation's going to occur, and don't pull them out of the refrigeration until maybe an hour or two prior. They get them dressed. I don't do that part of it, but I've seen it many, many times over the years and see how it works. They get the body ready, and place them in the casket and then take them in the chapel and get ready for the service.
All right, so let's go through the whole process. So somebody passes away, and the coroner is who initially comes and picks up the body, right?
No.
No.
The funeral home staff picks up the body. What
Okay.
happens, usually a coroner is only involved if it's an accident or an unattended death. You know, like when I say unattended, like hospice or, you know, a doctor being present, like in the hospital.
Okay.
Okay, so if my husband died at home, okay, that was a coroner case. So the coroner did have to come out, and they had to have an autopsy done on my husband, because even though I was in the house, it's considered unattended because I'm not a physician or a hospice nurse, and it was unexpected.
So you don't have any right to say, no, I don't want an autopsy done?
Not in that situation, I did not. And in my situation, I knew the coroner. I know him very well, actually. He's a friend. And in my head, I knew what needed to occur. I was in shock. I found him. 911 call happened, and then there's people in my house, and I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was a hysterical mess. And finally the coroner got there, and he just told me it had to be done, and I was crying. I begged him. Begged him, please don't do that. And in the same respect, I thought to myself, oh, this doesn't, I got police officers all in my house.
Right.
Yeah, why don't you want an autopsy? This is where my head went. And of course, I know better. He knew where I was coming from, because he knows I know what is done when an autopsy occurs.
Right.
And in the funeral industry, when someone dies, it's usually referred to as the body. When a person dies, it's you immediately just become a body. Even in my almost 25 years there, I just still can't refer to someone that way. I mean, that was my husband. That's, you know, other people, it's their mother, their daughter, their sister, their father, you know, all of that. It's still hard for me. But I get it. That's the industry. But I knew what was going to happen to him, and that was hard for me. But it had to be done because it was an unattended death.
Right. And if you don't mind me asking, what did the underlying cause of death end up being?
They said it basically widowmaker. He had some blockages in all three main arteries. I didn't know. Maybe he knew. I don't know. He never said. It was quite the shock. We were actually out here in our little community of Milford visiting the night before, and spent an evening out, and went home and kissed him goodnight, told him I loved him, and he was going to come back out here the next day and work a fundraiser. And I went to bed, and
yeah, I actually saw him that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we did see each other.
Yeah, we did.
Yes. And I went to bed, and he stayed up. He did that a lot, watched TV, and I woke up at like 4:30 that morning, and he wasn't in the chair anymore, but sometimes he would move to the couch.
Sure.
You know, so I went back to bed and woke up and walked in the living room at 7:34 in the morning. And I only know that because I was looking at my phone to tell him something, because I thought he was up. The TV was on. And went around the corner, and literally my life changed in a blink of an eye, which happens to so many people.
Yeah.
So many people. But even though I've been doing this so long, like I said, I knew the procedural events that needed to occur, but that's as far as I could think at that moment.
So it sounds like it didn't make the process any easier for you. I mean, because you've been around that for so long, and then it happens to you, and it completely takes you out of that realm of understanding, right?
It did, because I was in shock. I mean, literally, I was in shock, and I can't even begin to explain what happened to my body. And it's a weird thing to say, but I literally felt like I was floating across the floor, because I called 911 and then threw my cell phone, and I couldn't call anybody else. I didn't know what to do. I don't even remember opening the door. I don't know how they got in the house, the police officers, but they were there quick. And I just couldn't think. I knew what needed to be done, but I just couldn't process it all. I felt nauseous. And then I'm standing there going, I have to make phone calls. I have to call my daughters.
Right.
That was key clue. I had to let my daughters know immediately, because we know social media, it's going to get all over.
Right.
And people have police scanners, and my husband was pretty well known.
Yeah, he was.
And I just had to make those phone calls.
Yeah, and that must have been really shitty.
It was.
Did they? I've never been in that situation, so forgive me if I'm not trying to be ignorant. But when they do come, do they just ask you just a shitload of questions?
Yes, and yeah, I was asked by many police officers what happened, what happened the night before, what did you guys do, and I got my wherewithal about me to be able to answer the questions, and I had to repeat the story like 3 or 4 times to 3 or 4 different people, which is fine. I get it; they're doing their job, but it was exhausting.
Right.
I mean, I was a mess. I was literally fresh out of bed, still in my t-shirt and boxers. Will say, I ran downstairs and put on a bra. Never looked in the mirror, never brushed my teeth. Just was like, okay, just put a bra on. And I was going to know almost every fireman that walked in the door. And I did.
Right.
It happened to be that shift. And that's fine. They didn't ask me any of those questions. The firemen didn't, which I was grateful for.
Right.
But I understand the police have to do their job. I mean, but it was a little intimidating.
Yeah. Did you ever get any of the sense that like you were a suspect in that situation? Like, is that the kind of line of questioning it is, or?
It was direct. There was some sympathy there. There definitely was. They're doing their job, and it was awkward. You know, I was just looking at them like my husband's laying there dead on the couch.
Right.
And I'm hysterically crying. Snot's everywhere.
Right.
I don't even know how a person has that much snot. I'm just being honest. But I knew I had to answer the questions. I didn't ever feel like I was a suspect. I felt like, how many times do I have to explain this?
Right. Right.
But
it's
again,
just over and over and over.
Yeah, it was 4 times.
And how long did that last?
Oh my gosh. It seemed like forever. Not long, but the whole process though of people getting to the house, and it was such a hot June day. It was just 19 months last week. It was so hot outside. I remember we had to go outside and be in the garage. I just couldn't be in the house.
Right.
I had to get out of there, and we didn't want anybody else to see him. You know, I even had to keep my daughter out of there. And another lady detective came and she asked me the same questions, and I'm just like, can't they just tell you?
Right.
I mean, I've already said it like 4 times, and I wasn't trying to be rude. I just was losing.
No,
I was
but
just
you're
dwindling.
you're emotionally, physically drained, and like you said, you haven't even had an opportunity to really wrap your mind around the whole situation, because all you've been doing is answering questions and giving reports, right? So,
right. And I know I went into shock. I mean, it was the worst feeling ever. I just felt like my skin was disintegrating. I felt like sand. I don't know how else to explain it, but it was shock. It had to have been. I mean, I know it was. And I think I was in shock for almost the entire first year.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't ever lost a spouse. But I can only imagine, especially where it just comes out of left field.
Yeah.
And you don't have any warning that it just all of a sudden happens. But I imagine you being in the field that you had everything set up and ready to go for the most part.
Well, you would think I would have, being in the industry that I am and doing what I do. But Mick and I talked about everything. I always knew what he wanted. So I knew that. You know, I knew what to do. And maybe if we had written it down, I wouldn't have second-guessed myself on some things afterwards. But I did know he did not want to be cremated. He wanted to be buried. And he's right out here at Milford Cemetery with his family, right next to his grandpa and his dad and aunts and uncles and cousins. And I knew that. I knew I was going to make his funeral as personable as possible. And I'm a strong believer in that. And it's hard to do that with some families, because sometimes the churches or whatever religions they are,
right,
they don't allow that in the church. And I get that. I'm not bashing on anyone's religion. Mick and I didn't attend church. I mean, he was a Christian. I was a Christian, or I am a Christian. But I knew I was going to make his service as personal as I wanted it because he deserved that. And I was spending thousands of dollars, even though I am an employee there. You have to pay.
Right.
But I wanted his service to be what I wanted it to be, not what someone had to tell me it had to be.
Sure.
And the funeral home never does that. Let me make clear on that. It's church things, certain songs, Catholic religions won't allow certain songs. I mean, at Mick's funeral, I played Let's Give, Heaven Some Hell.
Right. Right.
And I played that, and I played a couple of Elvis songs. I did Amazing Grace. He was a diehard Elvis fan. So I did that, but we walked out of that church playing My Prerogative. And the firemen carried his casket to My Prerogative. And I say the firemen because those firemen were some of his best friends. And he always told me which 6 should carry his casket. And I made sure it was those 6.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And It was just as hard on them.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hard on them, and will be forever grateful for them.
What was your relationship with God like before you lost Mick?
I believe in God. I mean, I do. I believe in a being or whatever. I will say God. I believe in God. And I think it was a good relationship. I prayed. I didn't go to church, but I did do a lot of church services. And when I did help a family and do their service at church, when it was time to pray, I prayed. I was there and I did my praying there, and I'd pray at home or whatever. And I would drive sometimes talking to God. Sometimes that's all the time I had was to talk in the car.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of time that's all I have now. But I believe in God, and I think I'm still okay with God. I mean,
was there a rough patch after that? Were you ever angry and ask why and have those conversations?
I sure did. Lots of times. There was a few times, I mean, for the first couple of months of leaving work, because he died June 19th, I went back to work July 5th. Because I felt I had to. I just felt like I got to get back to some kind of normalcy. There was no normalcy. I needed normal. So I tried to do it, but I found it was hard. I mean, I'm in the house where he died. Now I walk in that door every day to the funeral home where he was also.
Right.
It makes it difficult. And I'd go home and I'd start crying every day on the way home for almost 2 months, even with my grandson sitting next to me. He finally stopped asking me what was wrong, Nana.
Yeah.
I mean, but then I'd go home and you're just there. And for the longest time, I kept waiting for him to walk in the door. And I'm like, what are you thinking? He's not coming back. And then there's those moments of, wow, he's not coming back. Why?
Well, and I would think being in a place where you're around caskets and that whole motif, was that a trigger for you as well?
It's hard for me still when I have to take a family to the casket room, because when I am prearranging with families, we go look at urns, we go look at caskets, we go look at memorial paper products, we go through what type of casket do you want, what color, do you want wooden, do you want metal, those kind of things. And the first few times it was difficult. And then I finally just got in the mode to make sure I'm still talking to these people as we're walking in the room. And,
right.
Just keep my mind focused on them, because it's not about me. It can't be about me when I'm at work. I have to keep it together, as hard as it is. There's days it's hard, you just have to keep it together.
Are you, what kind, have you had any freaky experiences being alone with the past? I
think back in the day, before, my husband passed, there was a lot of times in my old role there, I would be working late at night. I'd be there sometimes till 8, 9 o'clock at night getting things done for families, for services, because sometimes we'd be really busy. And I remember sitting in my office once, and there was 2 other chairs there. And I'm sitting there just working away. And all of a sudden, it sounded just like someone literally sat down in the chair behind me. And it got my attention. I stopped and I picked up the phone and I called my husband because he was at home waiting for me. I was like, "You're not going to believe what just happened." And he knew I meant it because I felt it.
Right.
He's like, "You need to go ahead and come on home." He said, "Just stay on the phone with me till you get to your car and we'll do that." And I did. I got out of there. It was the strangest thing, but it's even kind of more so at home now.
Really?
Sometimes I'll be getting ready for work downstairs in the morning. That's the way it always was. I have my downstairs. He was upstairs in that bathroom. But, I'd always be downstairs in the morning before he would. He would still be watching the news, And I would hear him walk across the floor. I mean, he's okay. He's in the bathroom. He's going to go get ready for work. Sometimes I still hear that. I swear I do. I mean, it literally sounds like someone's walking across my floor, just like it did when he was there. So I don't know if it's real. My daughter tells me that because she lives with me now, I had her and my youngest grandson move in with me last April. And she's like, "Mom, I swear I heard your bedroom door shut." But she said, "But then I go upstairs and it's opened." And this was just a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think he's standing in the hallway. I swear one time I was coming upstairs to walk in the living room, and there he was. And I just literally shudder because he had on the same shirt he had on when he died. And that's what I'm like, is this my mind? Do I want him to be there?
Right.
I mean,
of course.
Yeah, and I do want him to be there.
You do, absolutely.
I do. So, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, did you always believe in life after death? I mean, I know it's like it's one thing to believe in God, but did you always believe in life after death?
I don't know. I can't answer that. That's a really tough question because I just think it depends on how close you were. I think that has a lot to do with it, how close you were with that person. I know I started seeing a whole lot more cardinals after my husband died, and a lot more butterflies, especially within the first few months. I remember going right out here to the cemetery. It was still warm outside. I think it was last October. I came out to visit him on an evening after work, and sometimes I'll take a chair and go sit there and talk to him. Or sometimes I take the chair and I get up wandering. I'm wandering around, and I'm sure the people on the highway are driving by because when I talk, my hands are flailing, And I was like, "You know what, Mick, I need you to give me a sign. I need you to let me know you're okay, and I need to know everything's okay. I just need to know." And all of a sudden, this hummingbird just came out of nowhere and just hovered right in front of my face. And I'm just like, what in the world? It was the strangest thing because it just came out of nowhere.
Right.
And it just hovered for the longest time, and then it just went away. But it gave me peace. It was all I can say is the strangest thing, but it brought me peace, even though it was a hummingbird. Hummingbirds are beautiful, though.
Do you have a lot of people that are looking for affirmation when they're going through this process?
Yes.
How does that? Give me some examples of that.
Well, I mean, I've had people ask, how will I know they're okay? And, I try to tell them, I don't know. That's something you will only know when it happens. And I firmly believe that. Mick's uncle died, and we were having his service at the funeral home. And I went to my office window. Literally, there was 3 cardinals sitting on the bush. And I remember our district manager was there, and he saw the look on my face. I'm like, there was just 3 cardinals outside the window. I mean, but it gave me peace to know he was going to be with his wife now. So I just think you have to look for those things. And sometimes maybe not look, they're just going to happen and it's going to hit you.
Sure.
You're going to know when it's the right thing.
Yeah, see, religion kind of left me in a hole because the way I was brought up, they obviously believe in the life after. I mean, I just like most Christian religions, I think it's what most religious people look forward to is the thereafter, right? that's kind of when you get your glory and find out where you're going to be hanging out and stuff like that. And but ever since losing my faith, it's kind of been interesting because I've had to reevaluate where I sit in the scheme of things, because you hear different stories, and like it's not like I don't want there to be, but the simple answer really is I don't know. You know, I've never gotten confirmation from loved ones that I have known that have passed on that they're somewhere else.
My little grandson, he played football this year for Junior Jays. And there he was out on that field, and he was running. He was a wide receiver. He was only 10 years old. He caught that football, and he ran for that touchdown, and he got it. That day when I got him in the car, we were leaving. He had his little friend with him. I was driving home, and I asked him, I said, how'd it feel to get that touchdown? Because I was so excited for him, you know, and he was like, Nana, he goes, it was great. He goes, but you know, the strangest thing happened. He said, right before I caught that football, a big black and orange butterfly flew right in front of my helmet. And he is convinced that that was his Papa Mick. He's convinced of it.
What's the significance with the butterflies and the cardinals?
It's just that your loved ones are there with you. Butterflies are a sign of it's an afterlife sign from what I understand. My daughter's really into that.
Okay.
And cardinals are a sign that your loved one's with you.
I know the Indians believe that hummingbirds are a loved ones that have passed on in incumbent their auras, or I don't know how it goes, but I've heard that is the way that they think. I've never associated, you know what I mean, with anything.
Well, my daughter, actually, it was the day before Mick died. She had called me. She was sitting out having a smoke break at work. She's like, "You're not going to believe this," and I'm like, "What? What's going on?" She, drama, whatever. And she was like, these butterflies are all around my windshield. I'm just sitting here smoking a cigarette, and these big black and orange butterflies are right here. I said, well, shoo them away. What's the big deal? I'm like, why are you calling me telling me this? I'm at work. I'm busy. So I hung up. It's like, I got to go. I don't have time for this. Well, and then she's a firm believer that they were giving her a message that something was coming. She firmly believes it. She looked up butterflies, cardinals, everything. I was going to ask you, what made you lose your faith? If I can ask that.
Absolutely, you can. This is an open, honest circle of trust. Well, a lot of things, but the straw that broke the camel's back is we had been trying to have kids for a long time. And we finally were able to get pregnant through IVF and lost the baby at 18 weeks because they didn't think that my wife was a risk, a carry risk. So she needed a cerclage, but they didn't know that. So incompetent cervix, the water broke, and that was it. And that's kind of when I needed God the most. And I just wasn't happy with the answers that religion had given versus the science end of things. I could totally wrap my mind around incompetent cervix, you have to have amniotic fluid to survive.
Right.
It didn't work out. But religion kept telling me that, at least from my religion's perspective, you hear things very common like, well, she was so perfect that she just needed to experience mortality for a little bit and then got to go back to heaven. And it just wasn't a good enough excuse for me, because we weren't one of the couples that it was just so easy to get pregnant. You see some of these people that shouldn't be able to procreate at all. Just it just comes so easy to them. You know what I mean? And then you've got the people that really want it, and it's so hard to obtain that. And we tried for so long. I mean, I think it had been 8 or 9 years at that point. And I was just like, man, why couldn't have someone else had to deal with that. You know, why we're trying so hard, we're going to be good parents, we're going to love these kids, and you know, we ended up getting pregnant again
Mm.
and got the cerclage, and since then have had two beautiful
Oh,
beautiful girls, and they're amazing. And but it just brought things into fruition for me that it just didn't make sense. And I'd gotten into astrophysics at that time, and it was a whole other world that had opened up to me. And I was like, you know, if it's hard in a religion because the Bible is your history book.
right.
I mean, they tell you all the answers to everything are in the Bible. And then on top of that, we have the Book of Mormon. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but the Bible was giving misinformation. It wasn't making sense. Like religious people don't believe in, oh my gosh, I'm gonna botch this. Not natural selection, but you know, evolution.
Right.
Religious people don't believe in evolution. They believe that we came from Adam and Eve.
Right.
And I always had struggled with that. And then as I got to know more about DNA and DNA genealogy and then the science behind that, I'm like, this is a no-brainer. Of course we didn't come from two people. That would be impossible. And I don't know, I just didn't like the way that God ended up being portrayed in the Bible. He kind of seems like a whiny baby in some situations, because we were told that we had free agency and we came down here to practice that free agency. But in the Bible, when people practice their free agency and it's unbecoming to the happiness of God, he just kills everybody. And I thought that was an interesting, you know, anyone else that did that, we call them terrorists. And God gets away with it in the Bible because he's God and he can do whatever he wants. And it just didn't sit well with me. So there were a lot of things that were just butting heads. And I was getting more understandable answers from the science realm than I was the religious realm. And I've since, so I went through my 12-step program.
Uh-huh.
I was angry in the beginning, and now I've kind of moved to the outlook that religion or no religion, rather it's true or not, I want to just be the best version of myself that I can be, and just love people and give people the benefit of the doubt, and just be that version of myself. But I want to do it for me. I don't want to do it for a God.
Right. And I understand that completely. I'm obviously not on that same, realm that you are with
Right.
things. And that's fine too. I mean, I think everyone can, agree.
It's to each their own.
Yes.
Whatever
Just be
makes
kind.
it
Just be a
right.
good human.
Absolutely.
Just be a good human.
Absolutely.
I mean, I find myself sometimes wondering, okay, God has a plan. I mean, when you're raised that way, that's how I was raised, God, with God, all of that. I've not had that moment in my life where I've really, I have a question. I guess I can't say that. There's from younger childhood stuff. Yeah. And there's been some things that go on in the world that I don't comprehend.
Right.
With war and, that's what war is always about, religion.
Absolutely.
And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. But when we work with religion through the funeral home, it's mostly us just working with the ministers of the church, and
Sure.
and we let the families visit with the priest or pastors, ministers, whatever they call themselves, and let them have that time to plan their services. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So the funeral home really stays away from that because that's not our
Right.
role.
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, no, totally.
So,
1000%.
So it's hard for me to, back to the question you said earlier, when people ask me, you're just going to see it on your own. I just think
Right.
so many things happen for whatever reason. I think you could question so many things in life every day for the rest of your life.
Well, and I think sometimes it comes down to as simple as and look, this isn't for everybody. This was just my screwed up interpretation.
Oh, right,
But
right.
I had thought that somehow that if you were a righteous follower, that you had more protection.
I get where
than
you're
if you
saying.
didn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I could.
So it's easy to, at the end of the day, to go, why wasn't I good enough to receive this blessing? And I like the flip side of it, where I'm like, shit happens. Good people, bad people, it doesn't matter. The same wind blows upon us all. And it doesn't matter if you're one of the best people in the world, like Mick was, or the worst person in the world, like, Hitler, Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Death comes for us all.
Yeah.
And it's shitty. All of it's shitty.
There's no avoiding it. And I have friends in my life that experienced what you and your wife went through, and it took them a long time and a lot of money doing IVF.
It's so expensive.
And they finally, one couple especially, I adore them, adore these people. They finally have 2 little boys. And I know it was hard for her to watch other people having children when they wanted them so badly, and they finally have that. And I know they're both so grateful, and I'm so happy for them. But when things like that happen in life, I think it's normal. We're all humans.
Sure.
We're all going to question stuff. Why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's perfect by any means.
No.
But like you said, I've never heard someone say it the way you just said it. When you are a good, righteous person, you believe and you try to do all the right things to be kind. Why can't I get this blessing? I've never had it put like that.
It seemed to me, especially like over the pulpit, that's kind of what we were taught. Is if you obey the certain commandments and you live a certain way, you're kind of promised that in a way, that you're kind of going to have a one-up on everybody else because you have the answers that nobody else has the answers to, because every religion believes they're the true religion, on the earth. And contrary, I didn't like the person that I was becoming thinking that, because I would look at someone else and go, oh, if only they had the gospel in their life, they would be so much happier. And it just came to the point where I was like, you know what? I can't subscribe to that anymore. I have to believe that even if there was a creator and this is their creation, there is no scarcity. So people on the Titanic dying, they just got to go home. In the eyes of the Lord, that wouldn't be a big deal. So why would you even want to meddle with any of that? I mean, and we're going like deep down the rabbit hole here.
Right.
But on the surface of it, I needed things to be simplified. And that was kind of where I ended up. Like, if people ask me now, do I believe in God? I like to say I live as though they exist. But I don't know. That's my answer. Everything that we have to read about, to study, to anything has been passed around from generation to generation to generation. And I just don't trust that men would have the answers to be able to give us fortified information that's where it's at. And then after the loss of Abby, I was just like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I can't subscribe. I've got to pave my own way and find out where my values lie. And it's been an interesting journey, because I did have to start over, and there isn't a religion for the non-religious really out there. I had to learn to become a spiritual person without subscribing to an organization or an organized faith. And you totally can. Some of the most spiritual experiences I've had outside of religion have come through different means of self-realization, like meditation and stuff like that. Just I've had some profound experiences, and I don't know. But that's just the bottom line is I don't know. But that's why this stuff is interesting to me.
It is interesting. I mean, throughout life, I've found myself questioning when a child passes, being in the funeral industry, when someone's lost their child, or it just doesn't, that's the hardest. I mean, that is the hardest. And you do question. I'm like, wow, how could this happen? Why take that child? I mean, and that's one of the worst things you'll ever see in a funeral home.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Is when a parent loses their child, no matter how they die, and also suicide. Seen that a lot. And and I find myself, it weighs heavy on me. I think about it. I don't leave it at work. I mean, there are many times I'd go home and I'd talk to Mick about it. I'd call him during the day.
Sure.
I need to talk. And he would listen. And then even on into the evening, we would talk about things. I mean, I had to talk to him. But there's nothing worse than hearing the wails from parents that have lost their child.
Yeah.
And no matter how old they are, it's gut wrenching.
And I don't think there's anything that could ever be said to those people that would bring them enough peace that they're just okay with that.
There's nothing you can ever say to anybody.
Right.
I mean, before Mick passed, when our families would come in, I mean, of course, even on the phones when we make first contact with them, you're offering your condolences. But then when you see them, I hug a lot of our families. I know a lot of them. I'm going to give you a hug. You need a hug. I need that. I mean, to help you.
Right.
It's just how I am. And you offer your condolences. But once I was put in that spot, and people do not know what to say. You don't know what to say.
Well, and I'm not trying to get you to throw anybody that cares about you under the bus.
Yeah.
But some of the things that people say are just so stupid. You had to have had that experience.
Did you just make it?
Well, you know what I mean, though? Like you just, people, they do care, and they're trying to make you feel better. But they say something, and you're just like, that was the dumbest thing anybody could ever say.
I did have that, actually, and it was a much older lady, and she had lost her husband well before I had, and she's much older, and 80s at least, and she came in to see me, and she wanted to update some things in her file, in her prearrangement. She sat down, and she just goes, "Well, how you doing?" And I said, "Okay." She goes, "Well, welcome to the Widows Club." But you know what? It hit me. It hit me like I can laugh about it now.
Here's your certificate.
Yeah, but literally I can laugh about it now. But I literally looked at her across the table, and it kind of hit me.
Yeah.
Like a ton of bricks, because you know what? In her defense, I had not went there yet in my head. And there I am seeing it every day. But I never, Barb's a widow now. I mean, does that make sense?
No, 1,000%.
I just was like, wow, did she just call me a widow?
I'm not trying to avoid people, but after I heard what had happened, I knew I was going to see you.
Mm-hmm.
But I already made that conscious decision. I'm not going to say shit. I'm going to say I'm sorry and give you a hug, and that's it. Because there's nothing anybody can say that, and a lot of people go through things differently. Your loss is going to be different than someone else that lost their husband. It's all perspective.
Yep.
So
their relationship, it's all about
1,000%.
What your relationship was. And I firmly believe that in a marriage. I don't know why, but that hit me hard after. I mean, Mick and I were tight.
You guys were.
We did everything together.
No, you guys were. You guys were relationship goals.
Yeah, we had gone through a lot in our marriage, one big episode, and we made it work, and we did it, and we wanted to make it work. And I loved him with all my heart and still love him with all my heart. Anyway, it's tough. It's still tough some days, but I have to be strong, and he would want me to be.
Are you, I don't know any soft way to bring this up, so I'm just gonna say it. So
okay, here we go.
But you still have a lot of life ahead of you, a ton of life ahead of you, and you're very beautiful.
Oh,
and
you.
Are you open to the possibility of, being with somebody else?
I haven't went there yet in my head, not on a relationship level. I mean, I'm still wearing my wedding ring. I put it on every day like he's still here.
Sure.
I mean, it still feels that way. I think I wear it, though, to keep people away, men away. I'm probably not ready to go there yet.
Sure.
And, where I live, I'm like, I haven't seen it. I don't know. I'm not ready to go there. I'm not
a really good option out there.
That's not. Well, that's big shoes to fill. I mean, God,
Yeah.
it just is. And I'm not saying I'm not open to it. I just don't think I'm ready. It's been 19 months, and I know that seems like a long time.
No,
I can't believe how fast it's gone, though.
it goes by so quick, right?
And it shocks me sometime, every day that when that day of the month rolls around, it's like, wow, it's already, but I can still remember so much about that day. But then there's so many things I can't remember. I remember who was at my house. I remember those people that were there for me and are still there for me and were there for me before that. They were his friends too. And you see that a lot with marriages, and you lose a spouse. That's one of the things that do change. When you lose your spouse, you lose a lot.
Right.
You lose your livelihood. You lose your best friend. You lose sometimes your friend circles. I mean, you lose that person that you have those conversations with every day, those tough conversations that you need to talk about everything. Everybody it's different when you lose your spouse.
Sure.
It's because they were your person for every day, for however many years. He was in my life for 30 years. We were married almost 23 when he passed. So think about that. If you think about your spouse, what you would lose every day. And when you do lose that, that's why it's so important when you come to the funeral home, you got to have someone there that can help you prearrange. A lot of my families, when they lose someone, or our families, I should say, they want to prearrange right away. They want to get it taken care of because they don't want their kids to have to deal with what he or she just had to deal with. Sometimes the kids are with them. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes there are no children. Sometimes you're just left by yourself.
Well, and funerals are expensive.
They are expensive.
It's expensive to die.
It is. I say it all the time. We say it. We talk about it in the funeral industry. We know. Our vendors keep, raising their prices too. So we have to keep up with that. Why
does it have to be so expensive?
I can't answer that. The process of procedures, of embalming, all the there's a lot of chemicals. There's a lot of stuff you have to keep involved in the funeral home to take care of the person when they come into our care. And then you've got the building, you've got this building you're paying for the electricity. You're paying for the employees to help you get through this process. It's the overhead of the funeral director and the staff. It's a lot. Yeah. And people are on call 24/7, 365 days a year. You have to call people out in the middle of the night, whenever, to go pick that person up that passed away and, get that person ready for when the family comes in the next morning. Sometimes you're working into all hours of the night. I remember 1 month, 2 months in the year of 2010, December of 2010, we had 31 people pass away in that month. And it doesn't just happen day by day. One day we had 6 people die. 6 people.
Do you ever run into a situation where you don't have the storage?
It got really close then. It was getting close.
How many people can you keep on ice at a single time?
Well, it's not even but we don't even we have a cooler, I think, that maybe holds 5 people. Our community, this community and our community and any surrounding communities, Topeka, Salina, there's no morgues.
Wow.
You have to go to the coroner's office, the Frontier Forensics, in Kansas City.
Wow.
That's where they have a morgue. There's none here. The hospitals don't even have refrigeration for bodies.
So what do you do in that situation where you have more than you can process?
You have to make room, especially if they're embalmed. We have a prep room that we can keep it cold enough, for preservation. And we have a cooler that can also do, like I said, 5 to 6 people. And it's never been that bad, but luckily it was December and it was very cold. Winter months like this, if that should happen, at least you do have the coldness. That you can keep people preserved, especially if they're embalmed.
I'm not trying to change the subject, but we're running up on it's amazing. No, time flies when you do these. I know, and so I wanted to talk to you about preparation because I knew that was a big thing that you wanted to talk about. So tell our listeners what you recommend, because it's obviously not a fun thing to talk about, but shit happens, and you want to be prepared. So
Right. Nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, they don't. And I get that. But there's no age limit on death. I mean, a friend of mine's husband died yesterday. He was 59. He still had a lot of years left. My husband was only 65. There's no time limit on it. You should talk to your families. Tell them what you want. Come to the funeral home. Sit down with me or anywhere in your community, wherever you're at listening from. Go to your funeral home. Look around. See what your options are. Fill out the paperwork. You can fill out what we call a memorial planning guide. Sit down with you. We gather all your vital statistics information, where you were born, your social security number, date of birth, your parents' names, mother's maiden name. All of this stuff is required for whatever state you're living in, death certificate.
right,
And believe it or not, some of your family members don't know that information.
right,
They do not know it. So I strongly encourage it. Come in, give your family's information, your kids, your grandkids, and then we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about what type of services you want. Whether you want cremation, whether you want to be buried, do you want to have a visitation? What do you want? Where do you want to be placed? Do you want to be shipped to another state? I mean, there's a lot you have to plan. What songs do you want played at your service? What clothes do you want to wear if you're going to be in a casket? And believe it or not, I mean, women think about that.
oh, absolutely.
And even when you're picking out your casket, and I've had families, well, I want this casket, and let's put down this outfit so that it will match that. That way my daughter or my son or my husband does not have to worry about it. I will have my clothes prepared so my kids know exactly where they're at. I have a lot of families that do that. But then I have families that don't do anything.
Yeah, they're just kind of left to pick up the pieces at the last minute.
And
And that just adds so much more stress and anxiety to an already frantic situation.
And they make the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll overspend. And I kid you not, I swear to this. Last night, I was with a lady at a party. Her son died last year, accidental overdose. She literally said to me, I wish we had waited a little longer. We would have made better choices. She said we spent too much money. And a lot of people will do that during grief. I wasn't the funeral director that waited on him at the time. And that's not the funeral director's fault. I'm not saying,
right.
I'm just here to show you caskets and urns. And some people buy things by color. I'm not here to upsell. I'm here to let you make your decisions. That's the way it should be.
How does compensation work though? Is there a commission?
Actually, I'm an hourly paid employee.
So it doesn't matter what the family comes in and pays for or doesn't pay for. Your pay is what it is.
Some families can help with that volume. I am paid by volume also.
Okay.
I am required to sell a certain amount of our pre-need burial insurance.
Sure.
And I work with National Guardian Life Insurance Company. And I'm required to sell so much, like $27.5 a month on that. And then I can also sell headstones. I can also sell, we can do assignments, insurance assignments, transfers, annuities. That all counts for me too. I'm required to sell a certain amount a month.
Sure.
But other people on my team, they're not hourly employees. They strictly work by commission.
Okay, so it's
I mean, it depends on where you are. Here, I'm an hourly employee, and I'm not gonna lie, especially since my husband died, I wouldn't have been able to make it.
Yeah.
If I had chose to go
right.
strictly commission. And I'm grateful that they allowed me to do that.
Sure.
I'm very grateful for that.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't try to upsell.
And I'm not gonna hold your feet to the fire. But
Yeah,
what is your average run of the mill funeral cost?
It could probably average. Our service package prices start at $5,595.
Oh, that's not bad.
And that
that's an excellent
that was
deal.
funny. Well, however, that is just our service package price. That doesn't include the merchandise.
Sure.
So depending on which casket or urn you're going to choose, what type of services. I mean, we can do simple goodbye cremation. We can do a memorial cremation. We can do a funeral ceremony followed by cremation. And then we also have options of doing a traditional burial service, graveside service, with visitation, without visitation.
Can you have your own casket?
Yes, we actually have had a few families come in over the years that someone has built their casket. There's a guy right there in our town that does do that.
Is there a regulation on that? Does a casket have to have certain?
It needs to be the right dimensions. It has to be able to fit in a vault. If the cemetery requires a vault, outer burial container, it has to be able to fit in that.
Why does it have to go in a vault?
That's cemetery regulations. That's not. That's nothing to do with the funeral home. Two completely different entities. But I think a lot of the reasons that cemeteries do it, vaults are flat and they help elevate the ground, and it keeps things level and looking nice. Especially when people start doing headstones, it keeps the cemetery looking nice.
I guess if the casket itself, the caskets nowadays are aluminum, aren't they?
Some are, yeah. Pretty much. I mean, can be. There's so many different kinds. Metal, there's 18 gauge, 16 gauge, 20 gauge. 20 gauge is your less, not your best brand. I'm just saying like that.
Well, hey.
It's not. And a vault also protects what you purchased. It protects the casket, plus it's preservation for the body too. Keeps moisture out, water, most cases. I mean, we've disinterred bodies before.
See, and I'm just like, once again, not trying to be disrespectful, but I don't give a shit. Like, no, but you know what I mean? Like, if it was legal, like, bury me in the backyard. You know what I'm saying? Let my body return to the earth and plant a tree or something.
You're not the first person to say that to me. I've heard it thousands of times. Just put me in a pine box or just go bury me.
Yeah.
But it's the state that has regulations.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
We just have to follow the rules,
Right. Because it's interesting. I did a little bit of research before you came in. And I did find it interesting, because back in the day, it was handled so differently. The townspeople would come and help you collect your dead. Mm-hmm. They would bathe the body. You would do a viewing, which typically happened in the person's home. Mm-hmm. And then they would pick up the casket from there to wherever the body was being buried. They'd stick it in the ground and they'd bury it, and that would be it. And I don't know when that changed, but it's obviously a whole different process now, because you can't bury people on your own property, right? It's got to be.
I think it depends on what state you're in. I think I have heard of somebody out in Morris County that did bury their loved one in their backyard. They got to do a death certificate.
Right.
They have to have a death certificate done and file it with the state.
Sure.
Yeah, has to be done.
Man, interesting. Okay, so let's get into some of the nitty gritty here. So, because I've had let me pull up some of these questions that other people have written about. Maybe some myths that you can break for us. So, does the mouth get sewn shut?
I wouldn't. They don't sew it.
Okay.
They have a contraption that they use, and for the life of me, like I said, I'm not a licensed embalmer.
Right.
So I did not go to mortuary science school, so I don't want to give any false information here. They have a tool that they use to close the mouth, but it is not sewn. They do not do that. Okay,
so the mouth could come open then. What keeps the mouth from coming open?
I think that they staple it shut.
Do they?
But you can't see any of it.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
And they do pack the mouth, to make it have the right shape, because a lot of people come to us without their dentures. A lot of our people are elderly. Okay.
Right.
So, everyone knows what everyone looks like without their dentures.
Sure.
So you don't want to see that, So they do put things in the mouth to help form.
All right. And then the eyes. Obviously, our eyes are 90% made out of water. So I imagine after the body is dead, the moisture goes away from the eyes. What is put
They use eye caps.
There are eye
They're
caps.
called eye caps. Mm-hmm.
And then same thing. Is there anything that keeps the eyelids closed?
Yes, they glue them shut.
They glue them shut.
And sometimes it's really hard to do that. I mean, depending on how the person passed. I mean,
Sure.
all of that comes to play in everything with the service. Sometimes people aren't viewable. I'm just going to be honest.
Really?
Well, it depends on how they die.
How often does that happen?
A lot. You'd be amazed how many people are alone out there. And
Sure.
I mean, we have someone that they hadn't seen him since November. Seriously.
But so the body, as soon as a person passes away, the first thing that sets in is rigor, right?
And then it'll release, and then it happens again. It's very strange.
Really?
Mhm.
It just
I mean,
one
it's
other
just-
time?
I think, and it depends on the embalming too, because you're stiff and
The body loses control of all of its functions.
I can attest to that is not true.
Really?
My husband had a massive heart attack and nothing happened.
Wow.
Nothing.
Okay.
And I thought, and you know what? I didn't even think about that at the time. It took me months to even realize that didn't happen with him. So it doesn't happen with everybody, and I can't explain why.
Sure. What about horror stories of bodies sitting up after or during the embalming process or anything like that? Have you heard about anything
Well,
like that happening?
usually what causes that is when they're starting the procedure. A body will make a noise like a groaning noise, but it's the release of gases in the body.
Right.
That's all it is. It's not because they're still there.
Sure.
I mean, I've never experienced that or seen it. And I've been there 25 years and worked with numerous funeral directors, and they've never said anything that, guy's arm moved once, but it's just the body
You've
doing
got
what
nerves,
it does.
and we're electrical beings,
Yeah.
and so there's things sometimes still firing,
Yes.
and everything like
Mhm.
that. So
You just got to make sure there's not a pulse.
right.
I'm just going to say you have to have a sense of humor
Well,
if you're going to do this. I mean,
1000%.
I have to have a sense of humor.
Absolutely.
There's times I don't, and when you can't. You just
Right.
you feel it. You can't.
Right.
But you got to laugh.
Yeah, because it's a part of life.
It is a part of life.
It's one of those things that it's always been an interesting faux pas for me, because a lot of people are so uncomfortable about talking about that, particularly people that know that they're going to pass away.
When I talk to people, I mean, I cold call people. I have to call people to see if they want to come in and prearrange. And most of my people, though, they are people that I've already worked with, that we've already assisted through when they lost their loved one. But yeah, I've called people and they're like, oh, no, I'm not coming in there. Nope, not doing it.
Interesting.
I mean, they're just like, no.
And that's kind of a funny thing. Like, how does that phone call go?
I laugh because it makes me laugh. I can't help it. And then they start laughing. And I was like, well, alrighty then. And we kind of talk. I mean, I love people. I think I can work with a lot of different personalities, and I have over the years. I have a lot of friends that have lots of different personalities. And when I have to make that phone call and they say something like that, I can't help but giggle. But you can kind of tell by their tone. Sometimes you call, they're just going to hang up on you. They don't want to, and I get it, and you just move on.
Look, I'm not trying to kiss your butt, but like your personality is, if I was to go through something like that, I would want to deal with somebody like you.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Thank you.
Like you do have a great personality for that, because it is such a touchy, and especially nowadays, you don't know what you're going to say that's going to offend people.
Oh, and you have to be so careful. And you can feel when our families come in the door, I know I can. I shouldn't speak for anyone else. You can feel their vibe.
Sure.
I mean, I know who I can hug and who I can't.
Sure.
And I know, you offer them coffee, water, a soda, whatever. And it's the longest walk of their life, walking down that hallway to that elevator to go upstairs, or to climb those stairs to go upstairs. And you just gotta, you just have to realize they need you. They don't, know what they're about to do. They know why they're there. They don't know the procedures, or what we're going to ask them or what we need to help them do. And, the first thing you got to ask them is, what exactly is it that you want to do today? What,
Sure.
What do you want to accomplish and what type of services? You just have to be on their page. And,
Right.
And you got
to connect with them.
And you got to care.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I care. And I think I care too much. Sometimes I care too.
I don't know if you can care too much.
You don't think so?
No. I think it's the opposite, especially after COVID. I don't think people care enough.
Oh, that was the worst time
has gone out the door
ever when COVID happened. That is definitely, I will speak about this. And when COVID was going on, that was the worst time ever. People were angry.
Oh, I'm sure.
They didn't get to be with their loved ones when they passed. And I got it. I mean, you get it. I mean, and who are they going to take it out on? Some of them, they were angry with us.
Well, because a lot of people...
We were the last ones.
Because a lot of people weren't able to have funerals, period.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so,
No, we made it work. Some of it, we made it work.
Really?
We literally put tape on the floor. We had tape marks going through the floor.
Oh, my gosh.
On the floor to keep people so far apart. We had to have people stand outside for so long. We tried so hard to accommodate our families. We had a family that lost their little boy by an accidental gun shooting. That was our first funeral during COVID.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was the worst. And we tried really hard to make sure this family got to have what they needed to have. Right. For as good as we could make it.
Sure. When an autopsy is performed, do you guys ever have autopsies done at the funeral home, or is that all done?
No, it's never done at the funeral home. As long as I've been there, never done. They go to the Frontier Forensics. Used to go to there used to be a place in Shawnee County. Now they all go to Kansas City for autopsy.
Okay. When those bodies come back from that situation, they don't put the organs back in the body, right?
Yes, they do.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everything that is taken out is put back.
Back. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, so even the brain.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Wow. Cool.
There's no reason for them to keep that. I mean,
sure,
they can't do that. I mean, unless you've donated your body.
Right.
To science, but no, everything goes back.
But nothing is obviously they don't stitch the tubing and everything back together, right? Like the organs are there, but they're loose.
Right. And then when they come back to us, then the funeral director, embalmers, they have them in our prep room, of course, and they have to undo everything in position, restitch, do the embalming,
really?
and do all this. It takes a lot more time. An autopsy case for embalming and preparation can take up to 4 hours for the embalmer to do, as compared to your embalming that didn't have to, occur for a person that wasn't having an autopsy.
So what is in the casket that the general public wouldn't know? Nothing. So
unless the family, sometimes you can't always get shoes on the person, depending on how they died and how their feet are positioned. But we always place the shoes in the bottom of the casket. We don't put anything in the casket that does all that's on that person is the clothes that were provided and what they want to go with the body.
And does the family typically dress the body?
Oh no, we do. There's only a certain religion that dresses the body, and that's Mormons.
See, I was waiting.
Well, but they can my mother's a Mormon. My mom and stepdad are Mormons.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they live in Kentucky.
Okay. All right. So, but you're absolutely right. Mormons go in and
they
dress.
Come in. Mm-hmm, they have their certain clothing, and they do it all. And we accommodate and we allow them. We have some people of Indian descent that come in. We allow them to come in and they burn their incense and do things in the room that they need to do for their prayer. We allow that.
Have you ever been able to witness that? No,
I haven't. I just no, because sometimes they do it at their home, but then there's been times that and we'll have to bring the body back to the house and then go back and get it.
Oh,
or
my
we can
gosh.
do it.
So that's allowed then.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to have a viewing in your home, could you still do that?
There's no reason that we would have to say no.
Wow.
I mean, really, we take bodies in their caskets to go to the church for
Sure.
viewing. What's the difference?
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's how I look at it. Why not? If that's what they want to do. But we
That's
try
so
not to
interesting.
transport a body continuously without the body being embalmed. That is important in this day and age due to disease and
Right.
depending on how the person passed. It's a big deal. Embalming is important for preservation, disinfecting, everything. People die of MRSA, lots. There's in our funeral directors, hepatitis. I mean, they have to be aware. They have to get their shots every year whenever to make
protect
sure,
themselves.
to protect them. Yes.
Sure.
So it's got to protect the community too, So
I'm sure you've been able to talk to several morticians. What kind of a person do you have to be a mortician?
that's a loaded question. A very loaded question.
Because you're seeing the worst of the worst. Because I mean, people don't think about the car accident victims. Suicides and stuff like that. I mean that, and like you said, in some situations, obviously they can only put back together what they can put back together.
Right.
In some situations.
I think you have to have some really thick skin to be a mortician. And I work with the manager of our funeral home. He's been around it quite a few more years than me, but he went to mortuary school. So he's a licensed funeral director and embalmer. I think, a lot of the funeral directors I've worked with over the years, they know how to turn it off. I don't know. I don't want to be sexist like this. Maybe it's because I'm a female. I carry a lot of it with me.
Sure.
I see a lot of them, they're able to go from one family to the next. I don't know how they do that.
Right.
Because sometimes I have such a connection. And again, that's not discrediting them. It's me and my personality.
Sure.
Sometimes maybe I'm too close. I don't know. I weigh it all the time. Am I too big of a heart? Do they not have a heart? How do they just do this?
Yeah.
How do they just walk out the door every night and just go home, walk back in, stand around, have their coffee in the morning? But that's them. That's
Right.
them. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not that person. I can't do
Sure.
it.
Yeah. No.
And maybe that's how they get through it. I don't know.
I would imagine that's what you'd have to do.
Yeah.
I used to work with infection control, and so I've been in a lot of different places in the hospital that the general public don't get to go, and I've talked to a lot of physicians, and that's one of the questions I would ask all the time, particularly the ER doctors, because they see the worst of the worst.
Definitely.
And it's like, how do you not take that home? And they all told me that a lot of them, it's hard to have relationships because
you put in a lot of hours.
You do. And the amount you have to desensitize yourself to, because otherwise you'd be depressed all the time. And that's what was one of the things I was going to ask you is where do you find the joy? Because from my perspective looking in, it's always crying all the time. It's not like you're seeing people that it's been 6 months and they've had time to get over it. Like you're always seeing the people. It's always brand new and fresh for them. Is that emotional weight ever too overwhelming? And how do you deal with that?
It can be, especially when it's people I know. Not that I don't have just as much sympathy and empathy for others that I don't know as well, but those that I do know when they walk in, it takes everything I have sometimes not for my knees to buckle.
Sure.
And that was before my husband died. I mean, honestly, now it's harder, but I've heard it so many times over the years, and I consider it a compliment, and I'm humbled by it. They like to walk in and see a familiar face, and the other people that work there, they're a familiar face too, and they wait on those families as well. It's hard, Josh. Tomorrow's going to be a difficult day for me at work. I already know what's coming. But I got to just suck it up. And if I cry, I cry, but I try not to. I try not to let my emotions get involved. And, but sometimes, most of the time, families are like, wow, at least you show compassion.
Right.
And others are, and you'd be amazed. Some of our families that come in and they've lost their parents, they're actually okay because their parents were elderly or had dementia, Alzheimer's, or were very, very sick, and they feel they had lost them a long time ago. And they really do find peace. And they're okay. It's when they're younger and it's the tragic things that happen is when the whole staff has to really pull it together to make sure, because this is going to be a difficult one.
Right.
And we all just do it, but I don't know how I do it. I go home and cry a lot. I'm not going to lie. I've cried many times in the shower even before my husband died. That's how I dealt with it. I didn't want anybody to see it. Or I'd cry in my car driving home.
You just deal with it on your own and process it. And
I have a couple of close friends I can talk to some things about with them. I don't ever use the family's names, but I would never break confidentiality like that. But I have to talk to someone. I think it's the right thing to do. And
I think it would be a lot for anyone that has a heart, which I can't imagine anyone being callous to that situation. I'm sure that there's people that are better fit for it than others, but anybody, I think, that didn't get touched personally by that,
Well, and sometimes, I question. I'm like, God, how do they do that? I'm around them every day, and they just go home and they're okay.
And maybe they're not.
Maybe they do the same thing you do. That's what I was going to say.
Behind closed doors is when they do their...
I think everyone deals with it on their own. I mean, a lot of funeral directors drink a lot.
Sure.
As I raise my hand. I mean, there's at least a glass of wine a night or something, or a beer. It just helps calm you down a bit.
No, I really put you guys up there with first responders. Because you guys are kind of some of the unsung heroes as well that people don't think about. Because someone's got to deal with all of that stuff at the end of the day. And you guys are kind of the crew that comes in and cleans all of that up.
You're right. And that's why COVID was so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
And us, we work so close with first responders. God bless them. The things they see. And then, and then when it's their turn to have to walk in our doors, and those people and what they see. And then you're right, what we see. It's a lot, Josh. It's a lot.
If a body is left untouched, so like, let's say someone that has died in their home and no one has found them, how fast does the body decompose?
It depends on the weather too. If it's cold, it's going to take a lot longer. If it's hot, it can be definitely within 24 hours. Less than that, it
really?
sets in.
Wow.
Yes, it sets in.
Wow.
There's been some bad ones. I'm just, I'm just going to be honest.
No, that's
it's gross.
It's
horrible. And God bless those people that are the ones that find them. Oh my God. And
that's tough.
It's tough. There's nothing worse than, and I'm just going to tell you, it's a smell you'll never forget.
It is, right?
It is. It's a smell you will never, ever
unfortunately forget. have had the opportunity in my career to smell that, and it is very unique.
It is.
I think the closest thing I can relate it to is like rotten chicken. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at
that.
No,
dude,
but it's just, I've never smelled rotten chicken, so I don't know, but all I know is I've smelled it, and it can be so bad just from them bringing the body back. it gets in the vehicle and you can smell it through the building, and we're trying to do whatever we can to get those out of there, and it's out of our control. Sometimes it just takes a long time. It's when a lot of bleach comes out.
What's one of the worst cases you've experienced in all of your time being there?
I don't do removals, just so you know that. I just know what they tell me. But there's been some bad ones. I mean, I did one time there was a drowning victim. That's something you'll never forget either. Okay. I mean, literally, it's just not good at all. And car accident victims. A young couple many years ago was killed. And I remember the guy, his neck he was facing the wrong way and shouldn't have been, put it that way. But then the girl, I think she was laying in the seat and she must have had it laid back and she was asleep. She looked like an angel.
Really?
I'll never forget everything in her. It must have been all internal.
Wow.
It's just things you don't want to see. And
Right.
that's one that has really stuck with me in all of my years of being there. They were traveling and we're heading back home, and he fell asleep and slammed right into the back of a semi.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh
And then
my
there was
gosh.
another one we had a few years ago with children.
See, I think that would be, I'm a wuss when it comes to kids.
Well, yeah, me too.
I
I've got grandchildren now. I
Yeah.
would lose my mind.
Yeah, I can't. People that have been compassionate to my story, I've told everyone that, I do consider certain things a blessing, and I'm grateful that I didn't know Abby. I'm grateful that it never got to the point where I'm with my children now, where I've heard them laugh and seen the color in their eyes and smelled their breath and
Had those memories.
Had those memories. And
I get that.
Like I don't consider my loss up there with how bad it is for other people. I can't put myself in the position of a parent that has lost a little kid. And when I hear about them and read about them, it always hits me hard.
Oh, I know.
Because
cry
I
all the
think
time. Yeah.
about my own kids and how I would deal with that situation. And there's just a lot that goes into all of that. I wish, however, that people talked more about death.
They should. The thing is, just to touch on what you just said, memories are a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I'll just say that
Yeah.
for sure. And people should talk about death and realize it's going to happen. And that's why they should prepare. And when you do, just so when you do prearrange, it's a gift to your family.
Oh, I bet it is.
It is.
Because
and I've
it's
had
so
families
much
say that to me when
less luggage they have to deal with.
Yeah, they're like, Mom did this. She told us she did it, but we didn't know the details. It's sometimes my families that I meet with on prearrangement basis, we can fine tune it down to everything, the scriptures, the songs, everything. And all they have to do when they come in, we go over it with them. And then we call the church or wherever they want to have their service and set the time and place. And they sign the contract. We do the death certificate, and then we move on from there, have their service, and be there for them afterwards too if they need us.
Okay, so I know that you alluded to it a little bit, but I really wanted to help you plug this because I do support Johnson Mortuary.
Thank you.
I think you guys
Appreciate
are awesome, and have for many years. I've had the opportunity to plug you guys a couple of times on different platforms. But if people do want to sit down with you and get a plan put together, go if you're comfortable, go ahead and tell them how they would go about getting in touch with you and doing that.
Oh, here in our community, they would just call me at the funeral home, John's Funeral Home, 785-762-3131, or they can call me directly. It's 785-542-9201. That's my direct line at the funeral home. And I do work by appointment. Because sometimes I am really busy, and then there's days I don't hear from anyone, and you're trying to get people to come in.
Sure.
Because it is the right thing to do. I mean, we make doctor's appointments.
Right.
I mean, we plan weddings. We plan graduations.
You know, it's funny. So
I mean,
I used to own a wedding business,
mhm.
and people would always complain about how much it was going to be to
Yeah.
get married. And one of my best sales pitches was, "Hey, it's going to cost you more money to die, so at least you get to be at this party." You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So go
I don't know.
go a little crazy.
Funerals might be getting up there with weddings because I've seen some pretty expensive weddings and attended them for sure.
No, well, weddings are and weddings are ridiculous.
And you have months to plan for those.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just it. I mean, we really have to sometimes, pardon the pun, but jump through hoops
Oh, yeah.
to make a service happen for
Absolutely.
for as quickly as the family needs it, because they've got families come in. They got this, they have that. They've already talked. Some of our families come in there, oh, well, we've already set it for this. But they're like, wait a minute.
Whoa.
You can't do that.
Yeah, you got to tell
we
us.
got to talk to us because we could already have 5 other families ahead of you.
Right.
But
That's
believe it
a
or
lot
not,
goes
people
into
do
that.
that.
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
I'm like, okay, we got to talk about this. We can work through this. Let's think about this. You know, even if we have to get some more staff come from Topeka or somewhere, we've made it work before. We've made it happen. But it really puts you under a lot of pressure.
Well,
so, you know.
Listen, there's so much more I want to talk to you about, but
Yeah.
I know you're on a crunch for time. So, but you'll come back.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to come back.
Okay, great.
This was great. I'll come back anytime.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming in
you.
and giving your time. It has been awesome talking to you
Thank you for having me.
and sharing your personal experiences, and you're great. And
Thank you.
anyone listening, if you want the best in the business, you got to check Barb out. She's great. For everyone listening, you've been listening to the Just Josh and You podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. And you can find us on YouTube now. Say hallelujah. We're going to go ahead and say goodbye and sign off. Peace be unto you, and hope everyone's doing great. We'll see you next time.